Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. The scouting combine is here, and it's a pillar of the offseason. Not only do you get your draft prospects all under the same building, you get all the teams, you get agents, you get a lot of rumors, you get your first chance, maybe your second chance, depending on when it is, to talk to Duke Tobin if you're a Bengals media, because he doesn't speak too often to the media, which I think is weird, but that's not today's episode. There were some interesting comments, I think, from Zach Taylor, from Duke Tobin, and even the assistant coaches when they did their sidebars with the media, the local media in Cincinnati. But I think my focus is mostly on the players, the news, the injury news, because that's the big part about the combine. Teams are meeting these players for the first time, but they're also getting checked by the same doctors, which gives you clean evaluations of where these guys are at. And sometimes things are found. It can be precautionary things or long-term health issues that, will put flags on these guys during the draft process. So, but we're there to talk about the exciting parts of the combine as I record this late night Thursday night. So you guys will see it. You'll see this episode while the tight ends and defensive backs are doing their on-field work, testing and drills. We're going to recap the defensive line, front seven, linebackers, edge, defensive tackle group. I think the Bengals could take one of each of these positions, right? After they release or trade Jermaine Pratt, I could definitely see them drafting a linebacker. Edge, 100%. I think that should be a definite draft pick. If it's not at 17, it's probably at 49. Do we want to get all the way in the third round? I think this class offers some interesting players into round 3, so that could be that. We'll talk about some of those guys that may be falling a little bit. Maybe Jack Sawyer falling a little bit after the way he weighed in and then didn't test. But again, that's the subject. Let me get to it. Let me set it up. And then defensive tackle, for sure. You drafted 2 last year, but do you have that guy? And is there a guy available to sign in free agency? Unlikely, with Osa Odighizuwa rumored to be getting close to an extension with the Dallas Cowboys. We've only have one extension so far for the NFL offseason. That's Khalil Shakir with the Buffalo Bills, getting a modest extension for a wide receiver 2, kind of 3 wide receiver. Good money, but not game-breaking money like the Bengals are expected to have for T. Higgins. We've got the tag deadline coming up on Tuesday. Deadlines, that's when the extensions will happen, right? You put that tag on them, you put the pressure on them. I've talked about it before. We expect that to happen at this point. But let's dive into the players, their workouts today, and the front 7 of the defense. And I'm going to open up the draft spreadsheet for the first time on Bengals on the Brain. This is something we do every single year. So we're way ahead of the game. Shout out to Neil Engelberger, doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work for me. And we're going to look at some of these scores from athletic testing, the updated measurements in height and weight, arm length, why it matters, as the defensive line did their thing today, and who impressed as we're looking for all those positions. Let's jump into that spreadsheet. First thing, the defensive tackle group went first, and this is the draft spreadsheet that you guys will all have access to when we get there, when the grading is final. But you see the score here on column I. That is a running score. It is not finalized, so don't freak out when you see a couple guys that maybe are higher or lower than you expected, because we don't have all of the data compiled just yet for production, for PFF grading. I'm looking to the right here, so if I'm not clear on that, like PFF formula for how they performed over their careers. And then we have market share adjusted production. You will see me reference that a ton when we're looking at draft prospects and we're watching the film. That's just basically your standard production, like for defensive tackles for a loss, sacks, things like that, but adjusted for your strength of schedule and adjusted for when you produced, your age. So the younger you were, the better you were. But the guys at the top, this is how you know. Number one, how can I start with this? This is a little sidebar here. This is how you know NFL teams and other draft analysts are really putting data into their rankings, because it did not used to look like this. When you see MSA production here, look at those top guys. All the best guys are near the top. And guess what? When you go to age and look at the age, all the young guys are near the top. The 5th and 6th year seniors towards the bottom. The guys that got the sketchier production towards the bottom. Now, the part we want to talk about today is the RAS. This is headed by Kentley Platt on Twitter, Math Bomb, he's called. His website is Relative Athletic Score. It takes what you do at the combine in your pro days and gives you a number that's comparable to other players at your position in draft history. So it's a relative athletic score. That makes sense. So RAS is what we will call it. And their numbers, we move a decimal point over to keep everything 100 and make it even for our formula at the end. But the guys who did test, nobody at the top. Look at this. Guys like Walter Nolan, who met with the Bengals. If you see that all the way on the left-hand side, we got contact. Who met with the Bengals officially? Walter Nolan, Deion Walker, that we know of. So I'm sure there's others, and we'll find that out as the process goes. But the top guys did not test this weekend. The next guy, though, TJ Sanders. Is that a second round pick? Is that a guy at 49? Looking at the consensus, he comes in at 50. That'd be right there for 49. Omar Norman Lott tested really well. He's in the 92nd percentile for what he did do. There's still some stuff that's got to get filled in. We don't have all of the agility numbers as I'm recording this now, but I got to record eventually. So some of these numbers will change, and we will update that. You'll see that stuff happen on Twitter throughout the draft season. If you're not on Twitter, you'll see it through this. You'll see it on the internet, I'm sure. But Ty Robinson from Nebraska, will pull up his testing because he had the best day. He and CJ West really impressed to me. I liked what Derek Harmon did in terms of he ran and then he did his drills. So some of these guys did do some of the testing, but not all of it enough to get a relative athletic score. But I like the way Harmon looked. I really liked the way Tyleik Williams looked in his drills and in his on-field performance. So there's a lot of guys here. Darius Alexander also, again, strong, right? He doesn't have the production because he's a sixth-year guy out of Toledo, so he gets knocked for his age on his production. He gets knocked for his strength of schedule, but everything else looks really good. PFF liked him. He tested really well. It's going to balance out that score, I think, just a little bit here and leave Darius Alexander in the 70th range. We'll see how high he ends up going before draft time, before draft season rolls around. But if we were to sort this by these guys, by the highest scoring players and not the consensus, well, we're looking at Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, TJ Sanders, Kenneth Grant, Tyleik Williams, Deion Walker, and Derek Harmon at the top, with CJ West pulling in that top grouping, and then a gap. So far, and we don't have production scores in there yet for CJ West. That will be compiled after this weekend where he was really good. So we'll see how much it impacts him. And I still have to watch tape on him as well. He and TJ Sanders will be two guys I will watch right away. So without going too long on that, I want to pull up Ty Robinson's scores here from the combine. So here's Ty Robinson, a 9.91. This is unofficial at this point. Man, a 4.83 40-yard dash, really strong for a guy. 6'5", 288, kind of like a 5-tech type. You can see that weight is not ideal, but at 6'5", he's got the frame to put on a little bit more. Vertical, really good. Broad, really good. Ty Robinson has a chance to, being athletic. We got to see these agility drills still, but once you get this far, it means you're probably really, really good. This puts him at 18th out of 1,800 defensive tackle prospects from 1987 to 2025. So you want to know like the historical placement of that for his testing today. Ty Robinson, top 20 defensive tackle potentially in terms of athleticism all time. That's worth a look. We will make sure we get on that. It's probably because he's defensive end size. So that's something we have to worry about. Let's look at the defensive end class, though, and what they did today. Just like I said with the data, like these teams got to be using it. These draft guys got to be using it. Look at all the 3-year college guys. All the juniors are all at the top of the class. Then the 4th-year guys, and then all the 5th-year guys, and plus there's an 8th-year guy in here. Okay. but all the young guys are at the top. The Bengals met with all the guys that you would consider at 17. James Pierce Jr., Micah Williams, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, and Nick Scorton. They met with them all officially at the Combine. What does that mean to me? It means they're looking for some help for Trey Hendrickson and maybe a potential replacement for Hendrickson down the line. Hendrickson has a year. We'll see if they get an extension done. Both sides would like it to happen. Let's see if it does happen or not. You'll see these grades over here on the side. We've got more production grades for these guys than we did for the defensive tackle class. Most of the high producing guys are near the top, with Brady Swinson being one of the elite producers, but down a little bit further. So if you're a fan of Brady Swinson, Braden, I thought it was always Brady. Oh, geez, never mind. But you look at the relative athletic score today. The two clear winners, James Pierce Jr., Shamar Stewart. Shamar, he jumped vertical, broad, and then ran and tweaked his hammy, so he didn't do the rest. We got to see what that agility looks like, but already he might be one of the most athletic DNs we've ever seen. And you guys watched the video, right? When I reviewed the tape, I didn't love it. We'll go over the tape scores. If you're not aware of my guys, draft guy Jared, Mike Santagata, make sure you follow them on Twitter as well. They help with draft grades. So we've got 3 parts draft grades here for in terms of reviewing the tape. I'm the lowest on Shamar Stewart. These guys gave him first round grades. If you guys are with me on that, I didn't see it. But you know what? When a guy tests that well, he's at least going to be like an Odafe Owe, who is a solid player for the Ravens. Never turned out to be a stud, but I mean, at the very least, if you're getting that, you will take it because his production doesn't look great. Neither does his PFF performance. They don't love him either. So something to be aware of. I'm sorry. A couple other guys here. Landon Jackson. I think it's Arkansas. He's the guy with no hair at all. He's got alopecia. Stands out for that, but stood out at the Combine, jumping, running fast, looking really good, puts him in the near 99th percentile for athleticism, and his market share production's good, even though PFF didn't like him. So we've got some balance there on the data. It's probably why it's going to keep him in the second round. He's currently 55th on the consensus. That's Landon Jackson. 2 guys I want to point out real quick that came in a little bit stumpier than we want. Jack Sawyer, Ohio State. I know a lot of you guys like him. I liked him on tape as well. I gave him a 77, which is a solid second round grade. That 31 inches, that sub 32, I should say, those guys are all red right there. Sub 32 is not ideal for DNs. You don't get too many guys that are good defensive ends at the NFL level, sub 32. Carl Lawson's one of them, but the guys who do end up being decent go in the 3rd round. Like, they don't go higher than that. We may be seeing Jack Sawyer and Josiah Stewart in the 3rd round, which I tell you, at that spot, I would love to have either one of those guys. I got to get a grade in there for Josiah Stewart. I just watched him. He, to me, is like a 77 in the same range of a Jack Sawyer. I think he's got power and a small, compact frame. Reminds me of Elvis Dumerville, if you remember him. So I like both guys. And if you're telling me they're in the 3rd round, neither of them tested today, but Jack Sawyer did do some of the on-field stuff. He looked kind of stiff. So he's got short arms, might have some stiffness. He didn't run. That's not a good look for him. I will be interested to see what he tests as. Is he an elite athlete? If he's not, the guy makes plays. The guy is a pain in the butt. 3rd round value to me. I'm in on it. But a lot of these RAS numbers here are green, really green. The guys who were sure they were going to test well, they tested today. One guy who did not, Ahmad Hassanin, he did not test very well. He is not a natural football player. He's only been playing football for 4 years here at Boise State. I'm still interested. His market share adjusted production and PFF grades are worthy of a day 3 pick, but didn't test so hot. Ja Joyner being slightly above average. So anyone who tested today looked really good. I'm going to bring up a couple of those. I'm going to sort this, though. This will be the first time we're sorting the defensive end grouping, and I want to do this for good reason here. Abdul Carter, we'll see what he ends up testing as, if he ever does. If not, he's going top 10 or top. We know he's going top 10. He's going top 3 more than likely. But the next guys, who do we really want there at 17 if they can pass the background checks? Because there's rumors floating all around. Combine week, this is how it goes. Mike Green, James Pierce. No coincidence that these are the guys we've talked about now and gave the check mark to. on the draft reviews. I gave him high first round grades, not 85. 85 is like, this guy's good. 83 and 81 are, you'll take them in the first round all the time. But these guys also check the boxes for production, for performance data, and now James Pierce is checking it for athleticism as well. I don't have Mike Green's age yet, but James Pierce is young. So those two I'm in on. After that, we're looking at a gap there. And then it goes down to Jalen Walker, Princely Umanamilan, and then Donovan Izaraku. All interesting. Nick Scorton, right there. Braden Swinson, right there. We'll have to see how the testing adjusts those guys a little bit. Those are more second round type picks. I'm interested to Scorton tests like, though. He showed up at 257, which is down. Shamar Stewart showed up at where is he? Oh, he's much lower. If you're wondering where Shamar Stewart is, there he is, a 70. Oof. He showed up at 267. He was 280 at the Senior Bowl. He dropped a lot of weight to run fast, and boy, did he. I'm going to pull up him and James Pierce on the Math Bomb testing to show you what he did. So here's James Pierce real quick. 6'5", 245. He also had 10-inch hands. Nice big hands, right? 40-yard dash, a 4.5 flat. That is fast. 99th percentile. And then his vertical, which scared us because that was the first number we got, 31 inches. Not great. Broad jump, though, a 10-foot, 3-inch broad jump, 92nd percentile. So James Pierce is going to check those boxes. We don't have the agility scores yet. They're the last thing that came out. We want to make sure we get some agility scores on these guys. The Bengals have been bypassing agile defenders for too long. So I want to see it before I completely I'm already on board. But for everyone else, before I completely turn that key, we want to see that. And then Shamar Stewart here with the 99.9. I mean, we're talking a 4.6 40, 34-inch arms, 6'5", 267, and then a vertical of 40 inches, a broad of 10 foot, 11 inches, puts him in the 99.5 percentile. I mean, what a freak athlete. And when you look at the list of guys that are like a 9.8 and above, they end up being good in the NFL. So whatever the tape says, it's going to clash with his testing. The testing says it's worth the pick, despite everything, despite the data, despite the tape being frustrating. Shamar Stewart just might be worth it. And last but not least, linebackers went also today. And this is our first look at the linebacker sheet. I've got to put grades on a lot of these guys still. The Bengals met with Barrett Carter out of Clemson. I thought there was somebody else down here. Maybe it was informal and we're not putting it on there. Either way, Carson Swessinger is a guy I've got my eye on out of UCLA. I want to watch him. The guy looked the part, no doubt about it. Didn't get the full testing, though, so we'll wait on that. But look at the production scores. Really strong production scores so far at linebacker at the top. PFF formula, a bit of a mixed bag. A lot of these guys later they like Sean Dolek out of Buffalo. Jalen Walker down here, different Jalen Walker, Branson Combs. So we'll have to see how it gets balanced. But Jihad Campbell is the guy we got to talk about. And then probably going to be a film review next week because, boy, did he look good on the on-field drills. Moving really well, turning his hips, finding the ball, the bag drills, the weave drills, everything looked great for Jihad Campbell. And he ran everything with extreme intensity. Jihad Campbell, a 98.5 on the RAS today with 99 percentile production and a 74 for PFF formula. That guy is coming away with an extremely strong data score of 90. You look down the list, nobody's really even there. And it gives him an 86 overall, which you're looking at guys like Jalen Mike Green or James Pierce. Jihad Campbell scoring so far right with them. We got to get tape grades on him, which will affect his grade, of course. But just right off the rip, the data is saying this guy's good, worthy of pick 17. I don't care what position they play. You give me a stud. I don't care if it's a linebacker. I don't care if it's tight end, if it's guard, D tackle, corner, safety, D end. I do not care. You add a stud to this team, and I'm down. We can figure out the rest later. Jihad Campbell is going to be on that mix, no doubt. His score looks really strong. so far. So I can't wait to watch the tape on that. That will be one of next week's episodes. No doubt about it. After we probably review the rest of the combine stuff and then come back to it. But you can see a couple other of these guys doing really well. Danny Stutzman, who looks stiff on tape to me in the clips I've seen so far. But again, production looks really good. Testing so far is really good. Teddy Buchanan down here as well. So I'm going to bring up real quick, though, Jihad Campbell's RAS and see his testing because, man, he looked good. So Jihad Campbell here ran a 4.52 at just under 6'3", just a shade. We're probably the same exact height, 6'2", and just a shade under. 235, we are not the same weight. The comparison's in there. Good arm length for a linebacker. 10.5-inch hands is huge. That's a guy that's going to wrap you up with those oven mitt hands. Didn't do his vertical. Broad jump, we have that. We're waiting on the agility scores, but the broad jump puts him in the 96th percentile. He's on his way to looking like an elite athlete as we fill in this data throughout the process. Again, these aren't official numbers yet until we have it, but it's what we got right here on a Thursday night, creeping in a Friday morning for Bengals in the Brain. So a couple targets right there that, to me, let's sort this, right? We did that for the last few positions here. A couple targets here, though, as we have what we have, the score. A little bit of a gap here. Jihad Campbell really been out in front. The only guy clearly worth the first-round pick. Jalen Walker, worth one, depending on how it goes. I gave him a score here. With the defensive ends. What'd I give Campbell? Let me type it in here now. See how much it changes it. Where is he? Not because it's not Campbell. That's why. Jalen Walker. I give him a 79. 79 for Jalen Walker. Let's see. Brings his grade down a little bit. So I'm not worth a first rounder based on what we've got so far. Maybe Mike Sands will absolutely love him and put him up higher than that. So we got one first rounder at linebacker, Jihad Campbell, and he might be grading at an 86. That's a top 12 worthy pick. And then a bunch of guys for day 2. That's 5 or 6 guys, depending on how you want to mix it. 75 and above should be day 2, strong day 2 picks. You can even go down to a 74 if you're late in the third round. But that is pretty strong right there. Hopefully these guys can carry that and keep that throughout the process as we fill in this data. But if the Bengals are looking for a linebacker, might be one of these guys right there. Jack Kaiser, did he test? No, we don't have full grades for him yet. So he's rounding out the 6th, 7th round area so far in this. We'll see how it goes as he tests and we fill that up. So I've got some new targets and new guys I have to go watch the tape on. A couple of defensive tackles, a couple of DNs, a couple of linebackers. And that's how it's going to go. I'll let the draft process come to me in a lot of ways. And that's why the combine is so important when these guys test really well. Because I'll be honest with you, it's a prerequisite. If you may say, I don't need the data, I'm a football guy, just show me the tape. Listen, we all want the players to look good on tape too. But also, who are the best players in the league? The guys that look good on tape usually are freak athletes that are super smart and had production. Typically. So let's pick from those guys. And that's why this stuff is important. So as we have corners and tight ends going, I wouldn't be shocked if the Bengals take a tight end pretty early. The way Dan Pitcher was talking about 12 personnel and the feeling I get about the Bengals, like how much they loved Eric All and the time they had him before he got hurt again, I think they're going to take a tight end at some point. And they met with Tyler Warren, Loveland, Helm, and Mason Taylor. So these are 4 of the top 6 or so tight ends in this class. They had formal visits. You only get 45 at the combine. To spend it on tight ends, I think they're going to take one. And we'll have defensive backs going as well, which the Bengals met with some of the top safeties, some of the top corners, Malachi Starks, Will Johnson. Those are 2 guys that you could take at 17. So again, don't get locked into these trenches and say it's got to be O-line or D-line. I agree. I'd like it to be if the right guy is there. If the right guy is not there and the right guy is there at corner, at linebacker, at safety, at tight end, I'm not going to be mad. The pick can't miss. I'm not saying that like it's infallible. I'm saying like they cannot afford to miss. So take a good player that checks every box. Production, tape, athleticism. And if you can also get the size being perfect, if the age is perfect, then great. Throw that in there as well. But I like getting new targets as the combine rolls on. so that I can go back to the tape now and say, all right, let's not waste our time on these guys that are bad athletes. Let's start looking at these guys that have good athleticism, good production, and then let's throw the tape on and try and turn the final key on Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. Until next time, Uday.
Hey, Dave Lapham here. While games are over for the season, there's no off-season for the First Star Media Group or First Star Logistics. Join me in the trenches and Joe Goodberry of Bengals on the Brain here on the First Star Media Group YouTube channel. First Star Logistics gave away great prizes during the season, which will continue with exclusive content and special giveaways during the off-season. So please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to help us continue to grow the channel.